Imagine waking up on a quiet morning in a modest village home. You get off the couch in the living room and walk a few steps to brew a cup of coffee in the kitchen. It's the most mundane daily routine possible. Except in this specific house, taking those few steps requires crossing an international boundary between two sovereign nations. If we zoom out from this single roof and pull back into the atmosphere over Southeast Asia, the scale of this geographical paradox becomes clear. Geopolitical borders are usually defined by massive physical barriers, wide rivers, soaring mountain ranges, or concrete walls. Here, national sovereignty is an invisible ghost haunting a single family's hallway. This is Sebatik, an island off the coast of Borneo. It's a continuous, unified physical environment spanning 452 square kilometers, yet politically it's sliced cleanly in half. The northern 41% belongs to Malaysia. The southern 59% belongs to Indonesia. The red laterite soil, the weather, and the local wildlife are identical on both sides of the island, but the people living here answer to two entirely different legal codes, spend two different national currencies, and send their children to two different school systems operating mere millimeters apart. How does a living island end up partitioned along a strict astronomical parallel, ignoring every rule of natural human geography? Before European cartographers arrived, territorial borders in this region were not rigid lines. The Sulu-Celebes Maritime Basin operated as an integrated, fluid highway. Indigenous seafarers and traders moved seamlessly between the overlapping spheres of local sultanates. By the late 19th century, that fluidity dissolved. The British North Borneo Company pushed aggressively south to secure deep-water ports and timber, running directly into the expanding Dutch East Indies Empire pushing north. Facing violent skirmishes over local tax posts, diplomats convened in London in 1891. British Prime Minister Lord Salisbury and his Dutch counterparts sat down to carve up the island of Borneo and avoid a colonial war. Inland borders are typically drawn along mountain watersheds or river valleys, but Sebatik's swampy, low-lying coast lacked commanding ridges. Unable to use natural geography, the diplomats negotiated a mathematical compromise, a clean, indisputable coordinate at latitude 4 degrees 10 minutes north. It took another 2 decades for colonial survey expeditions to drag that paper treaty into physical reality. In 1912, surveyors battled malaria and torrential rain to cut a path through dense jungle and drop permanent concrete pillars along the latitude line. An abstract geometry problem solved by European diplomats who had never set foot on Sebatik was permanently forced onto a living ecosystem. Despite the imperial dividing line, Sebatik's rich volcanic soils and coastal waters turned the island into an agricultural powerhouse, driven by 3 major economic pillars. In the Malaysian north, massive commercial estates operate heavy machinery to extract thousands of tons of palm oil. Meanwhile, the shallow estuarine waters of the Indonesian south host vast smallholder cooperatives cultivating raw seaweed for the global market. But the economic center of gravity for both sides of the island sits across the bay, the Malaysian port city of Tawau. Because Tawau is only a 20-minute speedboat ride away, southern Indonesian residents historically relied on the Malaysian city as their primary market. They transported raw cocoa and fresh crabs through unmonitored tidal creeks, and in return heated their homes with Malaysian cooking gas and purchased their groceries using the Malaysian ringgit. For a century, the local economy actively dissolved the border. The community shared ancestral bloodlines and daily trade routines that completely ignored the geometry of the map. When the British and Dutch empires collapsed following World War II, international law dictated that newly sovereign Asian nations inherit the administrative borders of their former colonizers. This legal inheritance quickly sparked a crisis. In 1963, Indonesian President Sukarno rejected the formation of the new Malaysian Federation and launched an aggressive military policy to crush it. Sebatik Island was suddenly a dangerous forward military frontline. Indonesian Marine commandos and British Commonwealth troops dug fortified bunkers and conducted cross-border raids directly along the 4-degree, 10-minute parallel. Where colonial surveyors had struggled to make the line visible, post-colonial militaries succeeded. They baptized the surveyors' coordinates in blood, turning a quiet island into a securitized border. Over the last decade, external catalysts hardened the border further. Armed militant incursions in the region and the COVID-19 lockdowns forced both nations to erect physical wire barriers, deploy biometric digital scanners, and station 24-hour armed patrols at formal checkpoints. Bureaucracy followed the physical security. The Indonesian government launched a strict rupiah sovereignty campaign, legally requiring all domestic transactions to use Indonesian currency, and thus aggressively severing the South's long-standing retail dependencies on Malaysia. And yet, if you walk into the border village of Aji Kuning today, you can still find the famous House of Two Nations, where stepping from the couch to the kitchen sink requires crossing a bright painted line dividing two countries. Governments can construct integrated digital checkpoints and enforce sovereign banking laws. But a geometric coordinate drawn in London 135 years ago will always struggle to cleanly divide a community that shares the same soil, the same blood, and the exact same daily existence.